Born to be great. Fire and blood. Pentas. Daenerys Targaryen. Pentas was one of the free cities that kept contact with Westeros. It was ruled by a prince, but it was just a puppet charged to make the Magisters rule the city. They said that Pentas had abolished slavery, but they covered making poor people get big debts with the rich people. In that way they were forced to repay them with their services. The mere thought made Dany feel sick. Pentas was a beautiful city, but the fact that they uncovered slavery was an act of barbarism. Viserys became a barbarian too, but in his own way. He used to slap her and her mother. He grew up with the time, obviously, and it gave him physical superiority. Now they were truly afraid of awakening the dragon. As he used to say, it was just a matter of time before he took her as his sister wife. Dany saw how her mother tried to contain Viserys' madness, but she failed. Their protectors persuaded him of stop mistreating them. The attitude of their new host didn't help to stop her brother's madness. His name was Illyrio Mopatis. He was one of the most powerful magisters in Pentas. His oiled beard was disgusting for Dany, his yellow teeth too. Illyrio made his brother think that everybody in Westeros remembered him yet. Though it was a cruel lie, Sir Gaerol told her once that no one remembered House Targaryen. He told her a few things about her nephew, about how he brooded even at such a young age. He told her about his dark grey eyes and the shape of his face. He had the same face of her brother Rhaegar, but he was dead and his son probably followed him to the grave. She thought about the white wolf and the white dragon in her dreams. Maybe that dragon represented her nephew, but now she wouldn't ever know. She was prisoner of her own brother. It was a sunny day in the city of Pentas. Dany felt a cool breeze in her face and hair. Her silver hair was long and soft. She didn't have the body of a full-grown woman yet, but any man could notice the curves taking form in her hips and breasts. She walked into a big room with a big pool where she took her daily baths. Sometimes her mother joined her, but other times she just had the company of her maidens. That day she took her bath alone. Dany entered to the boiling water. The maidens were pouring cold water to make it comfortable for Dany, but she never complained about the hot water. Viserys, on the other hand, was always whining about if the water is too hot, the water is too cold. Her mother used to take hot baths just like her. We are blood of the dragon, after all, she thought. She took a moment to relax in the pool, but the quietness got interrupted by her brother's steps. Dany, are you here? He asked with a wicked tone. I'm here, brother, let me finish my bath, she replied with an annoyed tone. Her brother became more impetuous with every passing day. She was coming out of the pool when he stood in front of her, looking at her bare body. He covered her entire body with his lusty gaze. Dany felt the necessity of emptying her stomach instantly. You know that I'm your king, right? He asked her. One day we will marry, as our parents before us. But before that day's come I'm going to need you, little sister. He walked closer and touched one of her breasts. The mere sensation of her brother touching her made her feel sick. But he was stronger than her now. She didn't want to wake the dragon. Last time he almost ripped off her hair. Why are you telling me this? She asked. A note of innocence could be noticed in her voice. She was looking at him with fear. Illyrio is a smart man. He knows that when I retake our ancestral throne I will repay him everything he gave us. He arranged a reunion with Khal Drogo, a Dothraki barbarian with a horde of 40,000 riders. I'll offer him something in exchange for his army. It could be you, sweet sister. Or maybe our dear mother. Viserys grabbed one of her nipples and started to twist it. An horrendous pain filled her body. You don't want to wake the dragon, right, little sister? His maniac gaze frightened her more than anything else. No, dear brother, I'll do whatever is necessary for our cause. Remember this moment, sweet sister, as the moment my reign began. he touched her chin, and then left her alone again. Dany's face was covered by tears after he left her. The tears weren't because of the pain he caused in her breast. They were tears of frustration. She and her mother were victims of her mad brother, and Illyrio Mapatis only made things harder for both of them. Now they were being offered to a Dothraki horse lord. She put on the pale pink gown that the Magister gifted her the day before. It had a silk belt of a darker tone that made it took her body shape, leaving nothing for imagination. She walked through the corridors of Illyrio's manse until she found her mother in her bedroom. She looked as sad as herself. Viserys told what he plans to do with us, she knew it. I'll try everything to save you from these barbarians, my dear daughter. But you must understand that I'm weak. I've always been weak. With your father and now with your brother, I thought that I could do things better, just like with my Rhaegar, but I was wrong. Her mother told before her voice broke. You protected us, and loved us all these years, mother. How could I say that you're weak after seeing you threat 2 knights with a small dagger just to protect us? Dany replied with a sweet tone. Her mother worked for them all those years in Bravos. She almost sold her crown to bring some food to their table. We are blood of the dragon, mother. We are the last dragons. We will prevail against adversity, but we need to stop Viserys first. Dany saw how her mother's eyes widened after hearing those words. But Viserys is the last living man of House Targaryen. How could we take him out of the way? Dany started to think. She was young, but she was smarter than her brother. I think I have a plan, dear mother. They were eating dates and some other fruits when Illyrio and Viserys interrupted them. Here is my beautiful family. His words were poison for Dany's ears. The time has come. Today we will meet Khal Drogo. I recommend you to behave. You don't want to awake the dragon. He said with a satisfied tone. A lizard in comparison to Rhaegar, Dany thought. Her mother always told her stories about her late brother. He had flaws like all men have, but he had a pure heart, the heart of a king. She said once. They walked to the manse's entrance. There were standing 4 riders. They had long braids, copper skin and beards. Khal Drogo, I have the honor to introduce you to King Viserys of House Targaryen, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm. Illyrio spoke in Dothraki. Dany didn't understand any of the words he said, but one of her maids was translating for her. And I present you to Queen Rhaella Targaryen, and her daughter Princess Daenerys Targaryen. The man with the longer braid moved his horse forward. He examined them with his gaze. Dany knew immediately what was the meaning of that gaze. Her brother was offering them like a mare's, mere objects. He really wanted an army. But the poor Viserys didn't know that the Dothrakis don't sail. Khal Drogo made a subtle nod and left the manse with his riders. Is he satisfied? Her brother asked. Believe me, my king. We would already know if he didn't like the offering. Illyrio replied with a satisfied smile showing his yellow teeth. Dany and her mother left for their chambers. Now they only had to wait for Khal Drogo's answer. She felt how a shiver ran down her spine with the mere thought of her plan. She wasn't disposed to be the wife of a rapist barbarian. Castle Black. Jon Snow. Jon and Arthur arrived to Castle Black in a stormy day. In comparison to Winterfell, the castle was a neglected and deteriorated. The legendary Night's Watch became a place to send murderers, thieves and rapists. But among all of them, Aemon Targaryen stood as the maester of the castle. The old man was his last living relative in Westeros. Jon heard once about a grandmother, an uncle and an aunt that were living in Essos, but it never woke up his interest. They never tried to communicate with him. Even after Sir Arthur wrote a letter that they received in Dragonstone, even Sir Gayrold and Sir Oswell left him to find his family, and never came back. But Maester Aemon was different. He was an immense source of knowledge in Castle Black. The old man was sitting on a chair in the library in front of the hearth. His back was curled because of age. He was partially blind, but his old eyes still shone, as if he could see. Who has come to speak with this old man? He asked as soon as he heard Jon, Arthur and Lord Commander Mormont walk into the room. As Sir Arthur went and his squire, Jon Snow, wanted to speak with you, master. The old bear introduced them. Then come closer. I would be honored to talk with a knight. Eamon talked with his distinctive fatherly tone. Jon and Arthur walked forward and sat on 2 chairs next to the old maester. Lord Commander Mormorn gave them some privacy to let them speak more comfortably. Now that we are alone, I would like to know about you. Sir Eamon was addressing Arthur. Maester, I have to speak a delicate matter with you. It's about your family. Sir Arthur told him with a hesitant voice, my family. It's a long road from the Riverlands to Castle Black just to talk about my family, Sir Arthur went. I admire the fidelity of your squire for following you to this God's forsaken place. Jon noticed a hint of annoyance in his grand-uncle voice. He lived many years believing that he was the last Targaryen alive in Westeros. I assure you that I don't wish to offend your family memories, but you don't need to know much about me. My squire, on the other hand, has some things to tell. He looked at Jon and gave him a subtle nod. Then come closer, boy. I don't have much teeth left to bite you. The old man told him. Jon leaned close to Eamon. You're going to think that this is madness, but you're not the last Targaryen in this world. Jon's voice was cracking due to his nerves. A Targaryen alone in the world is a terrible thing. I suppose that you're talking about Queen Rhaella and her children. They disappeared long ago. Eamon replied. Jon noticed how his gaze changed and now was full of melancholy. I don't know anything about them, Maester, Jon told him with a cracking voice, as he saw disappointment in the old man's eyes. But I know that I'm the trueborn son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. I grew up thinking that this man with us was my uncle, but he was me father's best friend. Eamon's hands were shaking, his eyes filled with tears shining in front of the fire. Let me touch your face, boy. Eamon raised his hands towards him, and he let him touch it. You truly have your father's face. I only met him twice, but I could remember his face forever. What's your real name, boy? Tears were falling from Eamon's eyes. My real name, is Aemon Targaryen. 4 years I have longed for this moment. I thought that it would never come. Would you be so kind to reach that trunk over the shelf? The old man pointed to the dusty shelf full of scrolls. Jon took the trunk and brought it near to the hearth, where they were talking. I exchanged letters with your father before the rebellion. He was always talking about prophecies about dragons. Eamon was very excited with his new relative. Jon moved the letter and discovered something that left him speechless. Eamon noticed his reaction and chuckled. You found it. Sadly it has become stone over the years. Jon picked up the egg. It was white with a couple of crimson scales and some lilac hints. Where did you found a dragon egg? Jon was perplexed with the new discovery. I used to be the crown prince, boy. Many lords tried to gain my favor over the years. This egg was one of those gifts. I'm an old man now. I don't have any use for it now. But I would feel honored if you take this egg as a gift in your father's memory. Jon was speechless. A few days ago, he was just a bastard, and now his last living relative was gifting him a dragon egg. I'm talking to a king, and the people outside have no idea, but I understand the risk of being a Targaryen in these days. Eamon said with a proud tone, but I don't want to be king. Since I was a little boy, my only true desire was to become a knight, like Arthur or Prince Aemon Targaryen. Now I'm the squire of a true knight. I have never been so close to accomplish that dream. I gave you all the knowledge that I could. You're a squire now, soon you'll become a knight. But if become a king one day, I hope that you remember what I taught you today. Control your impulses, and protect the innocent, and don't forget who you are, or where you come from. I gave you all the knowledge that I could. You're a squire now, soon you'll become a knight. But if become a king one day, I hope that you remember what I taught you today. Control your impulses, and protect the innocent, and don't forget who you are, or where you come from. I promise you that I will bring honor back to our house, Uncle Eamon. Jon looked at his watering lilac eyes. A scream pierced the quiet atmosphere in the library. Jon and Arthur unsheathed their swords. The screams came from the Lord Commander's chambers. Arthur kicked the door, and saw 2 men over the old bear, beheaded one with Dawn. Jon stabbed the other in the back while Ghost was pulling him by his leg. The man then turned around, pushing Arthur against the wall. He pulled the sword out and tried to stab Jon. his blue eyes looking straight at Jon. But Jon was faster and threw an oil lamp and the man fell burning to the floor. 7 hells. What was that? Jon asked as he tried to recover his breath. It looked like White's boy. The old bear told him. A moment later he collapsed on the floor. Both leaned closer to the old bear. It seems like my day has come after all, he said with some difficulty. Jon's gaze raised to meet Arthur's. He knew when a man was close to death. Any last words or wish, Lord Commander? Arthur asked politely. My sword, Jaw coughed. Deliver it to my sister, Mage Mormorn. She's the Lady of Bear Island. It is a Valyrian steel sword, an ancient sword. He grabbed Jon's hand. His hands were shaking as life was leaving his body. We will make sure to leave it in your sister's hands, my lord. Arthur promised while the old bear's eyes closed and his life left the world of the leaving. His hands stopped shaking. Jon felt a huge pain in his hand. The heat of the moment made him ignore the burn in his hand after throwing that oil lamp. He got his hand bandaged by Maester Aemon. So, the old bear gave you a task, just like the tasks my brother Egg took over many years ago. Aemon was sad, but Jon's presence made him feel better. We will leave tomorrow, Uncle Aemon. Are you going to be safe here without us? Jon asked him. The vow we take in the Night's Watch can only be fulfilled with our death, just like Sir Arthur's vow to you. The old man was in his last days. Maybe in other life Jon would have shared more time with his uncle, but he had a duty now. The next morning they left on his horses to deliver Longclaw to its new owner, but the figure of a dwarf riding a horse made him freeze. I can't believe it. It's the bloody dwarf of Casterly Rock, Sir Arthur said with a disgusted tone. Greetings travelers. It seems like Ned Stark's bastard nephew changed his mind about joining the Night's Watch, the dwarf said mockingly. That's not of your interest, you bloody Lannister. Sir Arthur replied to him. Jon noticed how angry he was, but understood that his hate against the Lannisters was totally justified. They butchered his siblings and presented them to Robert Baratheon wrapped in Lannister's banners. The mere thought made Jon's blood boil. You don't need to be so aggressive, my lord. It was just a joke for the young squire. Can I give you an advice, bastard? Never forget what you are. Say it like an armor, because the world will never forget it. Tyrion's words made Jon laugh. What do you know about being a bastard? Jon asked him. All dwarfs are bastards in their father's eyes, Tyrion replied, and kept riding towards Castle Black while Jon and Arthur kept riding towards Bear Island. Pentos, Dothraki camp. Daenerys Targaryen. Khal Drogo took her as her wife. He wasn't interested in a mature woman like her mother. He was a barbarian after all. The wedding took place in a big tent made of sticks, straw and leather. 2 braziers were located beside her. Dany saw her mother face filled with disappointment watching as Viserys drank a jar full of wine. Then their gazes met. It's time to put our plan in progress, she thought, but her brother's voice took her back from her thoughts. It's time for the presents, dear sister. He walked forward with 3 girls. These are going to be your maidens, Dany. He pointed to each one of the girls and told her their respective names. Irri and Jiki are going to help you to be a proper Khaleesi, and Doria will teach you to satisfy your call properly. He stumbled due to his drunkenness. Then it was the turn of a Westerosi knight, Jorah the Andal, she heard from Khal Drogo's mouth. Princess, I bring you these books with stories of your land. It is not much, but it can help you to learn more about the 7 kingdoms, the hairy man said. I appreciate your kind jest, Sir Jorah, she replied. The knight bowed before her and her new husband. Magister Illyrio interrupted the moment to bring her present. This present, my princess, is to honor your family. The time turned thee into stones, but the surely are very beautiful. 2 servants brought a big chest with 3 dragon eggs inside it. Dany's gaze was fixed in the middle egg. It was onyx with hints of crimson. The other 2 were gold with cream and green with bronze. Dany felt a call coming from the eggs. Fire and blood, she whispered. Many men died during the wedding, as the Dothraki tradition dictated, but her new husband started to get bored. The time to execute the plan was right now. She touched the brazier on her right. It was very hot, but she didn't got burned. A moment later she pushed it to the ground. The embers turned the tent's floor and pillars immediately. She took a handful of embers and threw them into Khal Drogo's face. The barbarian was blind now. His eyes melted by the heat. He was disoriented but managed to hit Dany in the belly, knocking the air out of her. The people were leaving the tent in panic, and none of them noticed that their Khal and Khaleesi stayed inside. The smoke made Khal Drogo pass out a moment later. But Dany crawled with all of her forces to reach her dragon eggs. If I'm going to die, it's better to die in this way. Fire and blood, my children, she spoke to her beating eggs. After that all became black in Dany's mind. Rhaella Targaryen. When her daughter convinced her to set the tent on fire, it sounded like a wonderful idea. It was the best distraction to run away. They planned to reach the city of Yermak sailing. But all her hopes died when Dany stayed inside the tent. The fire consumed everything. All the Dothraki horde was there watching how their Khal and Khaleesi burned. Rhaella stayed there, crying for her little daughter. Sir Gaerol tried to save her, but the heat was unnatural. The flames roared like a dragon. "Not my baby, not my Dany," she cried and shouted. When the fire started to go out, a naked woman emerged from it. She recognized Dany immediately. Her hair was burned, but a screech left them all speechless. Over her shoulders and wrapped on her leg, 3 dragons emerged with her. Then Rhaella noticed how all the Khalasar kneeled around her daughter. The old knights kneeled too. Viserys was too drunk to notice anything. She followed her knights and kneeled too. Dany accomplished the impossible, and thanks to her, dragons were back. The mother of dragons, she thought, as she contemplated Dany.